Bayerische Motoren mean to you? Are they three German words that you can hardly say, or are they one of the biggest car companies on earth? Bayerische Motoren, aka BMW, is a titanium and popular car brand. From luxury rides to racing motorcycles, BMW has dominated the motor vehicle game for over 100 years. But everyone has a few skeletons in their closet. Unfortunately, BMW has about 6 million. The world plunged into chaos between 1939 and 1945. BMW was caught between a tyrant and total collapse. When all hope seemed lost, they made a deal with the devil to put the company back on track. So buckle up, we're going on a journey to uncover the true story of BMW and how they managed to transform themselves into one of the world's greatest car brands known today. BMW took to the skies before they ever hit the road. Bayerische Motoren roughly translates to Bavarian Engine Works Company and owe their roots to the German state of Bavaria. The company owes its origin to a German engineer named Karl Rapp. He founded Rapp Motoren in 1913, which eventually became BMW. Cars were still in their infancy when Rapp started the company. If you wanted to travel long distances, you did so by train or aircraft. Thankfully, Rapp knew his way around plane engines. Karl Rapp supplied Germany's entire air force during the First World War. The company's breakthrough product was the BMW 3A, a 6-cylinder aircraft engine. It was the powerhouse behind the Fokker D7, the best fighter plane during World War I. In fact, the Germans were forced to surrender all Fokker planes upon surrendering in 1918. Unfortunately for BMW, the Treaty of Versailles forbade Germany from building aircraft engines after the war. BMW faded into obscurity in the 1920s. They focused more on train brakes, motorcycles, farm equipment, and household items like pots and pans. The company relocated to Munich, Germany in 1920. In 1922, they got a massive cash infusion from construction pioneer Camillo Castiglini. He became the head honcho at BMW and brought the company into the four-wheel future. The first Beamer came out in 1928. They bought a struggling car company which specialized in Dixie cars. These cars were a far cry from the Beamers we know and love today, but they were the first domino in a long line of luxury brand vehicles, and it all began with the classic BMW logo. You can spot the BMW logo from across the showroom floor. They've been using the same blue and white circle design since 1917. It was a tribute to Karl Rapp's original company, but back in the day, BMW didn't care about branding, not like they do today. Since their main customer was the German Air Force, they didn't need to worry about slapping the logo on every D7 engine. In fact, the first ever BMW ad didn't even feature the logo. The blue and white colors represent their home state of Bavaria, Germany. They are just in the reverse order. Local trademark law prevented them from using the state coat of arms on commercial logos. From top left to bottom right, the Bavarian coat of arms is white, blue, white, blue. BMW used blue, white to get around the trademark laws. It has to do with how you read old school heraldry symbols. Every great origin story comes with a cool myth. BMW is no different. There's a common misconception that BMW's logo is a stylish propeller. It would make sense since the company started out making plane engines. The myth comes from a 1929 ad showing an airplane with a BMW logo on the propeller. During the late 1920s, the Great Depression was in full swing. Meanwhile, BMW was trying to promote its new aircraft engines. In 1942, BMW embraced the propeller symbol and ran with it until today. Fred Jacobs, archive director of BMW Group Classic, said BMW made little effort to correct the myth that the badge is a propeller. Wait, weren't they supposed to make planes anymore? BMW and the rest of Germany weren't shy about breaking the Treaty of Versailles, which prevented them from making planes. It was part of the German rearmament period between 1918 and 1939. It was a well-kept secret until Hitler rose to power. BMW's entire business model changed when the National Socialist Party, the Nazis, came to power in 1933. They became one of the most important companies in pre-World War II Germany. The Third Reich had them making aircraft engines in secret, using some business loopholes to avoid disclosure reporting. Basically, BMW cracked out German airplane engines and the paperwork got brushed under the table. But even the great BMW couldn't keep up with Hitler's demand. They had to build 2 more manufacturing plants in 1936 and 1937, bring them to 4 fully operational factories. The new factories were called shadow plants. The Germans painted them with camouflage to keep them hidden. That, or they built them in the middle of the forest. BMW kept expanding and buying up competitors as demand exploded. By 1939, the company had generated 275.5 million Reichsmark in sales, or $110 million at the time. They employed over 26,000 people. Both figures ballooned as World War II raged in the background. Most young German men were called up to serve in Hitler's army. That left BMW without an able-bodied workforce, so they turned to forced labor from Poland and the Soviet Union. Things got worse before they got better. In 1941, SS prisoners from concentration camps were forced to work on the manufacturing floor. By 1944, more than 50% of BMW's labor force were Jewish slave laborers. They worked 12-hour days and faced harsh punishments for the most trivial accidents. Allied forces bombed the heck out of BMW factories. After the war, plants in West Germany were banned from making cars and plane engines. Instead, they survived on pots, pans, and bicycles. Car production ramped up to the 1950s, but the crippled German economy made them hard to sell. Nobody could afford a luxury car. In 1959, BMW was on the verge of bankruptcy. Then a deal with the devil saved them from corporate takeover. BMW was about to lose it all when Herbert Quandt made them an offer. He invested a heavy lump sum into the company and became the majority shareholder. To the outside world, Herbert's investment was a post-war economic miracle. Nobody questioned how they got all that money. Its origins remained hush-hush for decades. Herbert and his brother Harold inherited their money from their father, Gunther Quandt. He made his fortune selling uniforms to the German Empire during the First World War. After Versailles, many German businesses were struggling due to hyperinflation. Gunther was smart. He held on to his uniform money and bought as many struggling businesses as he could. Within 10 years, Gunther branched into oil, electronics, and weapons industries. His textile company was a clothing empire, but his most profitable business was batteries. But all the monies in the world couldn't hold a steady relationship. Gunther's first wife died of Spanish flu in 1918. Then his second wife, Madga, left him for Joseph Goebbels, the mastermind behind Hitler's Nazi propaganda. Gunther didn't mind the relationship. He saw the writing on the wall. The Nazis were coming to power and he could make a ton of money if he got in good with Hitler. He offered his mansion to host Magda and Goebbels' wedding. Hitler was the best man. Hitler loved Gunther's batteries. His factories became the cornerstone of the German war machine. In 1939, Hitler promoted him to the leader of the war economy. As the Nazis seized factories across Europe, it was Gunther's job to keep them up and running. Like BMW, Gunther relied on slave labor in his battery factories. The average worker only lived for 6 months before succumbing to lead poisoning. His son Herbert oversaw operations at one of the worst factories, AFA. Herbert helped the SS build a concentration camp next to one of his factories in Hanover, Germany. They had plans to build more in Berlin and Vienna, but the Nazis crumbled and lost the war. Gunther died in 1954, leaving his vast Nazi fortune to his 2 sons. In 1959, Herbert saved BMW from bankruptcy, and the rest is history. While BMW isn't directly connected to Gunther Quandt's war crimes, they are forever in his debt. BMW started pumping out cars through the late 50s, 60s, and 70s. The 1959 BMW 700 series was critical in pushing the company out of the red, along with Herbert Quandt's money. The 700 series was BMW's quick foray into the affordable economy car market. They sold 188,000 units between 1959 and 1965. While the 700 series was turning profits, BMW wanted to get back to its roots. In 1962, they debuted BMW's new Class, a line of compact sedans. The new Class earned them an industry-leading reputation in sport-oriented cars. In 1975, BMW wanted to get involved in the art world, so they commissioned American artist Alexander Calder to paint the first BMW art car. He's the guy who invented the mobile art in 1931. They're those hanging wire sculptures that move with air current. It's kinetic art that relies on precise weighting to achieve mid-air suspension. The BMW art car became something of a tradition. Famous artists like Jenny Holzer, Frank Stella, and Andy Warhol all eventually painted one. But famous artists and impressive cars aside, BMW's greatest work of art might be the Engine Towers in Munich, Germany. The world-famous Engine Towers serve as BMW's primary headquarters. They are a set of 4 high-rise buildings in the Am-Reichenfeld area of Munich, which is basically BMWville. The BMW was designed by Austrian architect Karl Scholzner, and construction began in 1968. The 4 towers were meant to look like the 4 cylinders of a car engine. Construction wrapped in 1972, right in time for the Summer Olympics in Munich. In fact, the towers are right next to the stadium used during the Olympic Games. The whole world got to see BMW's awesome new headquarters. Needless to say, they were pretty jealous. Unfortunately, BMW had to remove all branding from the building during the games to avoid blatant product placement. If you look closely, you will notice that the 4 towers ain't standing on the ground. Instead, they hang off a central support tower. The whole thing is an architectural marvel. As such, Germany declared it a protected historic building in 1999. Today, BMW is among the most recognizable car brands in the world. They also have a knack for sustainability and environmental consciousness. In 2016, while celebrating its 100th birthday, BMW was named as one of the world's most sustainable car companies in the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. They're one of the only 3 companies to be listed on the index every year since 1999. BMW hopped on the sustainability train before any other car company. Between 1995 and 2015, BMW reduced the CO2 emissions of new vehicles sold in Europe by 40%. They began focusing on all-electric and hybrid cars in 2016, with 7 models hitting the sales floor. All those environmental accolades weren't enough to hide BMW's tainted past. On its 100th birthday, BMW came out and fully acknowledged its ties to the Nazi Party. In a statement, the company said it felt profound regret for the enormous suffering it caused while using slave labor during Hitler's reign of terror. To be as transparent as possible, BMW opened its archives to researchers and journalists who wanted to dig in. This led to 2 academic papers about BMW's history between 1939 and 1945. There was also an eye-opening documentary called The Silence of Quants that came out in 2007. Remember, BMW isn't the only company with skeletons in its closet. Volkswagen, Bosch, and Deutsche Bank all had ties to Nazi Germany. They all owe part of their success story to Hitler's war machine. As German historian Lutz Budras puts it, many firms have realized that understanding one's past has a positive effect. Then again, it's a great marketing strategy. While celebrating its centennial, BMW pointed to its role as a founding member of the Rembrandt's Responsibility in Future, a foundation dedicated to compensating former forced laborers and their families. However, they failed to mention how involved they were back in the day. The 2022 YouGov poll had BMW ranked as the 3rd car company in the world behind Mercedes-Benz and Toyota. It appears they have been forgiven for the sins of their fathers. Susan Clanton, Herbert's daughter, is the current heiress to the BMW fortune. She is the richest woman in Germany and the 50th richest person in the world according to Forbes. She and her brother Stefan own a 50% stake in the company. The rest is held by public investors. Does it matter that their father volunteered for the SS during World War II? That's up to you to decide. David Zheng, author of Nazi's Billionaires, The Dark History of Germany's Wealthiest Dynasties, poses some food for thought. Germany and the car industry go hand in hand. We're reprimanding the tycoons who profited off slave labor to dismantle their national identity. Is celebrating business success more important than acknowledging crimes against humanity? Maybe the answer isn't so complicated. Maybe the economy is beholden to a few billionaires who care more about protecting their reputations and fortunes than facing up to the past.